Good morning from the kitchen, folks. In this film today, I'm going to show you how to turn shop-bought apple juice into delicious apple brandy. So I need to begin by making an apple juice wash. Let's have a look at some of those ingredients. So I've got 5 litres of apple juice. I've got Lalvin EC-1118 champagne sparkling wine and cider yeast. I've got some tomato puree, which I'm going to use as yeast nutrient. I'm also going to be adding some water from the kettle, which I've boiled, and some brewing sugar. My fermentation vessel of choice today is the Munton's wine fermenter. So to begin the recipe, just like with a turbo cider, I'm going to add apple juice into my fermenter. So 5 litres of apple juice will be going in here. And you can really smell the apples, smell delicious. Just getting my 4th litre in. So this wine fermenter holds about 11 or 12 litres altogether. I'm not going to get anywhere near the top, but that's fine. It might build quite a big krausen because of the amount of sugar that I'm putting in. And now my last litre. So that's where I currently am. I'm now going to add my tomato puree in. I'm not going to put loads in, just a few squirts. Just basically what's left in this tube. It just gives the yeast something to feed on. I would have put yeast nutrient in, but I've run out, and this is just as effective. And it doesn't leave a taste either. So I'm just going to pick my fermenter up and give it a stir round like this, a swish round, and this will break up the strands of tomato paste so it mixes better with the apple juice. It doesn't smell tomatoey at all. So what I've got here is a saucepan on some weighing scales, and what I want to do is put 2 kilos of brewing sugar into this. I'm putting a lot in on purpose because I want to make a high strength wine. So I've got 25 kilo sack of brew sugar down here, dextrose monohydrate. And I can see that one of these full jugs will weigh 441 grams. So there we go, there's 1.988 kilos of brewing sugar in there, that will do. Okay, in this kettle I've got boiled water, and I'm going to pour that onto the brew sugar, nice and gently so it doesn't slop everywhere. And it will dissolve the brew sugar with reasonable ease. You can see as it goes in that it becomes sorbet-like, a bit like global warming. I'm just going to stir this now to mix the water and the brew sugar together and to loosen it up. I'm going to add a little bit of heat until the water goes clear and opaque. Okay, I've turned the heat off because it's nearly opaque and it will go completely clear now. It's very warm, this water, and I'm a bit concerned about putting it into the fermenting vessel, which is made of plastic right now, so I'm going to leave it for a little bit to cool down. Okay, 10 minutes later, and you can see now it's completely clear. Still too warm though to transfer into the fermenting vessel. Okay, it's been an hour, the liquid has cooled down to a safe temperature, so I'm now going to transfer it from the pan into my fermenting vessel. I'm using a jug so I don't make too much of a mess, because you know sticky sugar water can be a bit of a pain to clear up. It's very thick, very, very gloopy. And when the yeast comes alive in this, it's going to have a jolly good time. Okay, let's get the remainder in. Just going to give it a mix around. Just going to give the outside of my fermenter a bit of a rinse. Any stray bits of sugar water that might have got on it. I need to take the original gravity, but this liquid is still a bit too warm for it. But I'm just going to use the tap to fill my hydrometer tube, and I'm going to put this in the fridge until it's down to 20 degrees. Anyway, whilst this is too warm to take the gravity, it's not too warm to add the yeast. In fact, the yeast will like the warmth. So I'm going to pop the yeast in. I'm going to put in here 2 rounded teaspoons. And this is the Lalvin EC-1118 champagne sparkling wine and cider yeast. It's a good all-round yeast. It's great for wine. And with something like this, because I've put a lot of sugar in there, I'm wanting to get as high an ABV as possible. And the Lalvin will go up to about 18%. So I'm just going to give this a little bit of a mix around so the yeast doesn't all stay on the top. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my fermenter together, show you how this works. It's a really nice little vessel actually. So it's a good size if you don't want to do a massive 25 litre brew, but a demijohn's not big enough. This is quite a nice size. It's just over 2 demijohns really. Just, you know, there's about 2.5 gallons in this, or 11-12 litres roundabout for metric folk. Being a British person that was born in the 1970s, we were brought up by our parents with imperial measurements, but we were taught at school with metric measurements, so I'm pretty fluid in both of them, to be honest. So I do interchange when I'm talking about them. So this has got an integrated airlock just here, and when the bubbling starts, when the fermentation begins, you know, the yeast will eat the sugars, it will create CO2 as a byproduct, and that's what gets the bubbler going. We'll see this happening. So I'm going to give you an update as to how long fermentation actually takes with this. Okay, the must is now down to the right temperature for taking the original gravity. So in goes the hydrometer. And I'm pleased to say it hasn't sunk too deep, that's good. And I'm looking at an original gravity of 1.224, which is going to be good and strong. I'm just showing you the yeast beginning to come alive inside there. There's been nothing in the airlock yet bubbling, but you can obviously see that the yeast is having a move around and is becoming activated. Okay, it's an hour later. There's a definite krausen forming just there. Fermentation has begun. It's very slowly coming through, and that's because there's so much airspace here, but the normal air, the normal oxygen air that was in there, will be displaced by CO2 as fermentation happens. That's what will come out of here until eventually it's just CO2 coming out. So unless anything dramatic happens during fermentation, the next film that you see from me will be at the end of fermentation, and then it'll be going into the air still. So I'll see you then. Good morning from the kitchen, folks. It's time to get on with my apple brandy. Let's have a look at it. So it's been in the fermenter, believe it or not, for 14 weeks. I've just left it. I've had other things to do and it's not hurting. But today I'm going to get it out of there and into the air still. So the first thing that I want to do is to take the final gravity so I know what the alcohol by volume is of what's going to go into the still. So I shall just use the handy tap that comes on the Munton's wine fermenter. Hopefully it's not going to get clogged. I've overfilled that very slightly, but never mind, we can handle a little bit of loss. Sink, that is wonderful. 0.992. So I need to work out the final alcohol by volume by taking the original gravity and the final gravity. So I'll do that on here. So the original gravity was 1.124. I deduct from that the final gravity, which is 0.992. That equals 0.132. And then I multiply this by 131.25. Drum roll please. Final alcohol by volume of 17.3%, which is absolutely fantastic. That's almost at the tolerance of the Lalvin yeast. Well, I've never brewed a 17.3% apple wine before. I need to have a little nifter. Whoa. That is flipping heck. Do you remember that drink from the 1980s, Thunderbird? That's where we're at. Wow. It's gone beyond dry. It's gone dry and full-bodied. That is like... Hopefully this is going to make some good apple brandy. Anyway, as a true Yorkshireman, waste now, want now. In it goes. I'm throwing nothing away. Nout. So I'm just going to continue to empty the Munton's wine fermenter, and you'll notice that the bubbles in the airlock at the top as it's coming out. So I'm taking out 500ml at a time. It's going to be a bit slow, and then each 500ml will go in the still, and I shall continue to fill the still until I hit the full level just there. So I'll be back in a minute when the still is full. So I've still got about a third left, but the air still is now full. So I'm going to put the lid on. That just sits on top nicely. So the power setup to this is that that's coming from the mains into there. The fan is on a different circuit, and that goes into there. That plugs in. It's just like connecting a PC monitor into a PC base unit. Then this goes underneath there. Then I need to put the spout on the still so we don't get mess everywhere. So I've got the power on, and now I'm going to collect the 4 shots, because what I don't want to do is to add this into the final brandy, because the 4 shots contain the stuff which is extremely highly alcohol and possibly dangerous, and I don't want to risk that. So on it goes. I'll be back in an hour's time with an update. I'm probably going to collect about 150ml of 4 shots. So I'm making this up as I go along, but as it's work in progress, I've got a slight change of plan. I'm going to continue to make the apple brandy as advertised, but I'm also now looking at this. I'm curious as to what 17.3% sparkling apple wine tastes like. So I'm going to bottle a couple of these and add some priming sugar, and we'll have a look at that when I open these as well. So it's just a case of playing the waiting game now. I'm waiting for the 4 shots to start to come through there. I'm waiting for the bottles to sanitise here. So I'll be back in about an hour's time. Okay, just over an hour's passed and it's all happening. I've got a couple of bungs in there. I'm going to pour some hot water on to soften. I've got 2 bottles sanitised, ready to put some of this in. And the 4 shots have just started to drip through. I want 100ml, or 150ml, sorry, of these. And this will just soften the bungs a little bit, as well as giving the last bit clean. Okay, time to get some of this into these. So I'm going to use the tap on the fermenter and pour it into this sanitised jug before going into the bottle. I'm doing that because there are some little bits floating around in there, and what I don't want is trub in my bottles. Nobody wants trubby wine. Chewy wine. So I've got my little funnel there, and I've also got a filter, because there are some tiny little floaty bits in here. They're only minuscule, but you know, you don't want to be chewing on your wine, do you? So I'm just going to gently pour that through. Now I don't know if this will sparkle or not. I really don't know, because the yeast might have pretty much done everything it can. But if it does get a sparkle, then great. And I'll just show you what I've got in here, so you can see, you know, that there were some little bits and pieces which are better filtered out. So to give my apple wine a sparkle, I need to add some sugar. I'm just going to use standard household caster sugar, and I've got a heaped teaspoonful in here. I'm going to put that into the funnel, and now I'm going to pour some more wine onto the sugar in the funnel to dissolve it so it goes in. And then a bit more. Okay, so I'll get my hot bung, just pour the water off, shake the excess water off, get that on the bottle, and that's in nicely. And then to keep it in, I'm going to add a cage, because if the priming sugar does get eaten by the yeast which is left in there, it will cause a very fractional fermentation. This will probably go up to 17.5%, but what it will cause is CO2 as a byproduct, and that makes pressure, which gives it the sparkle. The cage keeps the bung in place. Okay, I've done that for one of the bottles. I've got to do it for the other bottle. You don't need to see that. Let's have a look at the 4 shots. So I'm on 100ml right now, and I want that to get up to 150 before I stop it. So I've got my wine bottles, I've collected my heads, and I need to have a little bit of a changeover. Ooh, I've got a little bit for later. Now the heads are highly flammable, highly flammable. Treat it with the same respect as you would petrol. That's going in here. Now I use this as fire lighter, and it's very effective as well. Sealed top, safe. Okay, I'm now ready to collect the hearts and the heads. So I'm removing this, and I'm putting underneath the air still something called a parrot. Now the parrot will collect what drips down. It will rise here, and when this rises, this will rise, and it will tell me what the alcohol by volume is at any one time as it's coming through. And then it will go down here and drip out into a collection bottle. Bish bash bosh. So I've removed the foreshots. Now let's have the stripping run. So this is dripping through at what looks like 69%, and it's now going into the collection bottle. So the stripping run is underway. So a quick 45-minute update. It's gone down 10% ABV, and I'm nearly on my first 500ml, probably about 450ml in there. Okay, the first bottle's getting quite full, so I'm just going to swap that over into that one. And as an update, we're on just over 50%. Okay, so for the 30 minutes and 250ml on, I'm on just below 40%, so this is a good strong liquid that's coming out. So another 15 minutes later, and I'm currently on 30% ABV that's coming out. I'm going to stop this on 20. Okay, so the bottom of the meniscus is now approaching 20%. I don't want to get any tails in this, so I'm happy to sacrifice a few millilitres if it means it'll be a better end result. So it's now time to switch off. And I'm just going to leave this now for 10 minutes. So I'm now going to empty all of this into my waiting demijohn. So I will have round about 1 litre. And of course, what's in the parrot. So I'm going to pour some of this into my hydrometer jar. And then using the alcometer, I'm going to work out the alcohol by volume of this. And this is currently on exactly 50% ABV. Okay, I now need to take apart the air still. So what's in here is very hot. You'll see steam when I open it. Now the liquid that's left in here is the tails. I don't want to drink this, but I will use it for baking bread, and it makes very good bread. If you've not seen my making vodka from potatoes film, watch that and you'll get a good example. This is what the tails looks like. So I'm going to pour my tails into this pan. I'll cover this over, leave them and use them as I need to. But let's get back to the stilling. So I want to redistill what I've got in here, but if I put this through at 50%, it's a potential fire risk. So I need to dilute it, and I want to dilute it to 25% by simply doubling the physical volume of the liquid that's in there. There's nothing fancy needed to do this, just tap water. So I'm now going to pour this back into the still, which is still hot, so you might get a bit of a sizzle. That's all right. It smells very vodka-y. And then just as before, I need to reconnect the fan on top of it. I need to put my parrot back underneath it, my collection bottle in front of the parrot, alcometer inside the parrot, and now this is the spirit run. Now in the spirit run, I'm going to collect everything between 70 and 20%, which is basically the heads and the hearts. That is what I'm going to make my brandy from. Anything that's left after that is tails. I'm going to throw that. So once again, I'm playing the waiting game. I'll be back in an hour or so. Okay, it's just started dripping through at over 70%. So it's coming through nicely. I'm still at 60% and we're about 400 ml in. So this is going to be a good one. Okay, I'm just getting to the end of the first bottle, first 500 ml done. It's still coming out at 50% ABV, so I'm just going to have a quick bottle swap. And on we go. Okay, we're on 20%. And I'm turning off. The spirit run is over. So I'm just going to leave this for 10 minutes to finish dripping through, then we'll pick it up from there. Right, let's crack on. So I'm going to pour the raw apple brandy solution from the spirit run, that neat alcohol, into my demijohn. I'm just going to remove the alcometer from the parrot. And then lift these two together, drain the parrot and the other bottle of spirits, and again drain the parrot. What's left in here is the tails that I'm chucking. I'm not keeping that at all, but this is the good stuff. So I want to work out what the ABV of this is, so I'm going to put it into my hydrometer tube again and dip the alcometer in. And this is on an alcohol by volume. It's exactly 50% ABV. Okay, I'm not going to water it down at all. If I do decide I'm going to water it down, I will do that prior to bottling. Now this is going to be a brandy. It needs to ideally go in a wooden barrel and be aged for ages. I can't do that. So I'm going to let the barrel come to the brandy instead in the form of oak chips. So I'm going to add oak chips into this and leave it to stand for a week. Now, I don't know how many of these to add in. This is 30 grams of oak chips, which are meant for wine. And it says to put, you know, this is up to 20 litres of wine and to leave it for 5 to 7 days. Now, I've obviously not got 20 litres. I've not even got a litre. So do I put vastly fewer of these in, or do I just tip the lot in? And the answer is I don't know, because I've never used these before, so I'm just going to make it up as I go along. I guess I could ask online, but that's less fun. So let's have a look what the packet looks like. So it's very powdery oak chips, and they literally are like powder. So I'm going to need to filter these with a coffee filter afterwards, because it's going to go messy. So they're only going to stick around the funnel if I leave them in the funnel. A dry funnel, that's the best way. Here's one I prepared earlier. Right, it's slightly wider at the base as well, so probably a bit better for tipping oak chips in. So I'm just going to proceed to tip the packet in. There's probably a bit less than half of the packet gone in there. Gosh, it really is some mucky stuff. Is that going to have any impact colour wise? Let's chuck it round. Yeah, sod it, let's get a bit more in for a penny. Right, I won't put it all in, so I've put 2/3 of the packet in. So this is a 30 gram packet, so I've put 20 grams in there. It's either going to be really oaky or not. I guess you don't need a PhD to work that one out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave this for a week. I'll give you an update midway through. But I basically want the colour and the flavours from the oak chips to be absorbed into the brandy before I filter, bottle and maybe slightly back flavour. Okay, so I'll be back with an update in a few days' time. Catch you then, folks. Good morning from the kitchen, folks. It's my Calvados apple brandy filtering and bottling day. Let's have a look at it. Here it is, and you can see the oak chips are there at the bottom. The brandy is largely clear above it, but it needs pouring through a filter now to get it nice and clear. And to do that, I'm going to use my coffee percolator because it's got a really effective filter. I've cleaned it out, there'll be no coffee taste, and it won't hurt the percolator either. I've filtered spirits a few times this way now, and I've always had good results. So here we go, gently does it. So that's from above, and that's down below. This won't take very long. So I'll pour all this through and then give you an update. Nearly done. Nearly a pot full. Okay, that's now all gone through, and the pot of coffee is 4/5 of the way full. Let's see how much is in there. Okay, here it is. It's a beautiful ruby colour and extremely clear. I'm more than happy with that. So I just want to measure how much I've got exactly so I know what I'm dealing with. So I'm just going to pour it into this jug. And I've got exactly 1.2 litres. So I've got 1.2 litres of 50% apple brandy there, and I've got two 750ml bottles just here. So that means I need 1.5 litres for these to be full. So I've got the scope to dilute this a little bit to get it up to 1.5 litres. Now I could use spring water to dilute it, but because it's apple brandy, I think I'm going to use apple juice from concentrate, which is really clear and will hopefully impart a little bit of an apple flavour. Okay, so I just want this to go to 1.5. Okay, that's virtually on 1.5. I've got one more ingredient I'm going to add a little bit of. And that is simply a little bit of sugar, just to give it a very slight syrupiness and just to take the edge off the harsh, burny brandy taste that it will have. This is a personal preference. This is not the way that Calvados is made. This is how I like to do it. So I'm now just going to stir this up until that sugar dissolves. It'll take a couple of minutes. I need to take the final ABV of this. So in goes the alcometer. I'm expecting somewhere between 40 and 50%. And in fact it's less, but now, because I've put the sugar in, it's now denser than what it would have been, and that's going to give a false reading on the alcometer. So I'm going to have to use some maths to work out what the ABV of this is. Okay, by adding 300ml of apple juice to 1200ml of spirit, I diluted it by 25%. 300 is 25% of 1200. Okay, so I had a 50% ABV. I need to dilute that by 25% as well, which means that I've actually come out at 38.5%. So the alcometer's not far off, it's about 5% off, but that will be the extra buoyancy from the sugar. So I've ended up with a spirit of 38.5%. Moving on, I've got my two bottles now ready to be filled. Got my funnel, time to pour. Nice and gentle. Looks really good in the bottle. Okay, so there is my lovely brandy. So to further soften the burn that might come with this, because spirits do burn, I'm going to use a bit of vegetable glycerin. You can get this from vape shops, and I'm actually extracting it into a children's syringe from an ibuprofen bottle. So I'm going to add 3 ml per bottle. If you add any more than that, it can taste a bit soapy. So I've got to put my lids on my bottles now. End of the process basically. And top of each bottle just for presentation, and because I've got them in, I'm going to add a shrink wrap which simply pulls over the top, and then the magic comes from adding a bit of boiling water, which causes the wrap to shrink and mould very nicely to the bottle, just to give it a nice bit of presentation. It's all about the theatre, isn't it? So my printer has broken, unfortunately, so I'm going old school with the label. So there's a slight juxtaposition in me talking about the presentation of the bottles with the nice fancy tops, and then printing labels out using a Dymo machine. Hey ho, a little bit of a contrast, but I'm not going to worry about it. And there we go. So I'm going to put these bad boys away for a couple of weeks, then it will be opening and tasting. That will be the next film. I'll catch you then. See you later, folks. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. It's my apple wine opening night. As ever, I'm very excited about this one. Now, this has been conditioning for 2 months, okay? Much longer than I would normally allow it to condition, because I've been hoping to try and develop a sparkle, but because this wine got to 17.5%, I'm not sure if there's any yeast left that are going to be able to help it carb. Even though I put priming sugar in there, it's really a gamble as to whether this is carbed or not. So I may end up with still wine, or I may end up with sparkling wine. I'm hoping I've got sparkling wine, but I won't know until I open it. So this was on a conditioning shelf for 7 weeks. It's been in the fridge for a week. It's nice and chilled. I can see it's crystal clear. I hope it smells nice, and I hope it tastes nice. And if it had a sparkle, I'd be even happier. But if it doesn't, I'm not going to be sad about it. Let's have a look. So I'm just removing the cage. The cage is broken. They last about 3 times and then bin. That's generally what happens. Okay, now I can see that the bung is partially raised on one edge by maybe a millimetre. It's a sort of encouraging sign, but who knows? Am I going to get a pop? No, that was really pathetic. Right, so I've got still wine. I think we can safely say this is still wine. Okay, so let's just appreciate the colour. So you can see that that is actually a really beautiful Chardonnay colour. It does look like actual proper, you know, really good wine. It's a beautiful colour actually, stunning. Really heady on the nose, definitely getting the apples, but more than apple. I don't know, there's a bit of citrus in there as well. I won't become one of those wine people that says it's got this and that in it, but that's just what's kind of hitting my nostrils. Right, the taste test. That is incredibly full-bodied. Oaky, slightly. A powerful, medium white wine. It is not as dry as what I was expecting, so the priming sugar that I've put in has actually back sweetened it rather than primed it and made it carb. It's very, very tasty, and it does not taste like 17.5%, trust me. It tastes like 11-12%. So this is potentially a lethal wine and one to be savoured. It would make a very nice dessert wine, actually. A very nice dessert wine. It's quite delicious. I'm very happy with it. So it's a thumbs up from me. It's not sparkling, but I've made a delicious white wine, so I'm happy enough with that. Okay, next up, I'm going to try opening the apple brandy. Hey folks, back again is the Renegade Master, this time with the apple brandy stroke Calvados at 38%, which has also been maturing for 2 months. Let's see what it's like. So first of all, I've got to break through the seal. There we go. Whoa! That smells very, very potent. Okay. So, I think we can agree that that is brandy stroke whiskey looking in terms of coloration and clarity. Yeah. This smells like something that I wouldn't really enjoy drinking neat. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a bit of a wuss when it comes to stuff like this. I'd stick a bit of ginger ale in it probably. But let me give you first impressions. Oh, wow. Actually does taste like Calvados. And it's not one of my favourite drinks, but it actually really does taste like it. Wow. Wow. Gosh, I tell you something, if you had a cold, this is better than medicine. In fact, it's the only medicine. Yeah. Do you know what? It's actually drinkable. But it's wow. Warming. Not burning, it's sweeter than burning, but it's warming. Yeah, it's not bad, but definitely for me, this is a ginger ale in this. That would make this like a nice drink to drink. Like I said, I'm not really a huge spirit drinker. It's not, you know, apart from whiskies, which I do like my whiskies, I don't really drink a lot of spirits. Unless I've got a mixer in them. But yeah, this is actually much better than I thought it would be. Yeah, it smells okay, but it actually genuinely does taste like Calvados. And that's something that surprised me more than anything, in all honesty. It's got a sweetness to it, and that isn't what I was expecting, but that is through putting the apple juice in. Yep, I think I'm going to say it's been a success. So cheers, folks. Hope you've enjoyed the film, and I'll catch you on the next brew. P.S. Before I go, I just want to give a big shout out to my nephew Aidan Cannon. Travel Time on YouTube. I lost a card game to him tonight, and this is the forfeit. Aidan, good lad. The film that you've just watched is a Moss Home and Garden production. You can find more by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. I'd just like to say thank you very much for supporting my YouTube channel and for watching my films. It really is very much appreciated. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in order to receive future updates about the home and garden films which I upload. You can find my YouTube channel by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. Please click on the red subscribe button. When you've done that, a little bell will appear. If you press that also, then you'll get future updates about the films which I upload. If you like my films, if you like my style of filming, then you might also like my travel channel, which you will find by going to youtube.com/Stuart Moss or type in www.mosstravel.tv. Again, if you could subscribe to that channel, it would be hugely appreciated. If you'd like to get Moss Home and Garden updates on Facebook, then please open Facebook and do a search for Moss Home and Garden, and you will find the page. If you like the page, then you will get future updates on there. And if you'd like to connect on Instagram for home, garden and travel photography, as well as some stories, then my username is StuMoss, STUMOSS. If you'd like to connect on Twitter, then my username is @StuartMoss. And if you'd like to contact me about film usage or any other issue, please just email me on stewmosshomegarden@gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much for supporting my channel, for watching my films. I do appreciate it. I'd just like you all to have a great day.